Have you ever been ghosted by ATC? You plan out a whole request for something like flight following and rehearse it in your head only to hear back silence on the radio. These things happen and sometimes they're outside your control, or sometimes you could be making one of these mistakes. Did you know Flight Insight has a free radio script for all possible VFR scenarios to help you become a communications pro? Check it out at the link here and in the description. Mistake number 1. Waiting until you're in too congested airspace to request flight following. Sometimes you can't avoid this, especially if you're departing from an airport under a Class B or C shelf. But an approach controller that's busy coordinating a traffic flow of inbound and outbound heavies into a large airport might not have time for your initial request. This is okay. You'll just need to proceed on your course until you're in a sector that's not as busy. Right now, we're traversing Cleveland's airspace east to west. We realize that we're not as familiar with the area and the traffic congestion has us a bit worried and decide now is the time to request flight following. A better idea would have been to arrange this prior to approaching the busy area. But at this point, we should wait for a less busy time in the controller's workload when there aren't a ton of other aircraft on frequency. Or, if we can't get that, just wait until we're further west and contact a less busy sector of Cleveland approach. We can find that looking at the comms for Norwalk Huron Airport, listing that frequency as 128.35 and make the request with them. It's important to have a less busy controller when you're making an initial flight following request because there's a lot of information they need and time required to process the request. Which brings us to mistake number 2, not providing your information on initial request. Requesting flight following is like ordering lunch from your favorite deli. You're going to order your usual, a pastrami sandwich, but you know there's other information you're going to have to give. If you go up to the counter and just say, pastrami sandwich, the person behind the counter is going to ask, what kind of bread do you want? You say rye bread, then what do you want on the side? You say french fries, then you want pickles or coleslaw, and now you're making all the other people in the line behind you upset. It's a lot better to have your whole order ready. I'd like a pastrami on rye with french fries and coleslaw, please. Asking for flight following is the same thing. We need to give all our info in as few words as possible. Cleveland approach, Skyhawk 518 Foxtrot Tango is a Cessna 172 requesting flight following to Ann Arbor Airport, Alpha Romeo Bravo at 6,500. By the way, we're assuming we've already made initial contact with ATC and have told them our present position. Typically, that should come first before a big request like this. So we try to avoid the controller having to prompt us for more information. If we just said, Cessna 518 Foxtrot Tango requests flight following to Ann Arbor, the controller is going to have to come back and ask us what type aircraft we are, what altitude we want, what the 3-letter identifier for our destination is, lots of extra talking. Another mistake is not keeping ATC up to date. In this example, we're flying from our present position south of Cleveland Hopkins Airport to Ann Arbor in Michigan. A direct route would take us over Lake Erie, too much of Lake Erie, and it's wintertime, no fun if we had a ditch. Also, it skirts Canadian airspace. We want to follow the shoreline, so we come up with a few GPS waypoints that'll allow us to do so. If we just tell ATC we're going to Ann Arbor, they'll expect us to fly direct, and when they see us flying a different course, it could throw them off. Also, it might affect how they coordinate our handoffs. Flying a more southerly route like this might put us in a different facility's airspace, and ATC will need to coordinate with them instead. So a simple call of, we'll be on an initial on-course heading of 280 will help them out a lot. Don't get too hung up on this. If you're changing course by like 10 or 20 degrees, there's no need to alert ATC, but any altitude changes or big course changes, you should keep ATC in the loop. Another mistake is expecting too much from ATC. Flight following has a ton of benefits. Traffic advisories, weather